In today's episode, we are getting real about what it actually takes to be successful, not just as a parent, but as a professional leader and a human being. Welcome back to another episode of ABA Mom. I'm your host, Allie, a board certified behavior analyst and mom of five. And yes, we are using ABA, applied behavior analysis, to break it all down. This isn't theory, it is practical, everyday behavior science you can actually use. Let's start with something simple. So I'm going to just go ahead and start with event governed behavior and rule governed behavior. So event governed behavior is you touch a hot stove, you get burned, you probably won't do it again. You stick something into a light socket, you get shocked, you probably won't do it again, right? And then rule governed behavior, someone tells you, don't touch the hot stove, it's hot, and you listen and you avoid it because it's a rule. Now, let's be honest. How many of us have learned the hard way, so to speak, at least once? So, for example, don't speed, you're going to get a speeding ticket, and you get a speeding ticket. Success comes faster when we can follow rules without needing the negative experience first. That's growth. That is maturity and that's leadership. You're not failing because life feels overwhelming. You're likely trying to change too much at once. So here's what ABA teaches us. Behavior change works best when it's gradual and intentional. So think about it. When you learn to read, were you handed a full book and just said, go ahead and read? No. You learned letters, then you learned sounds, then you learned words and sentences, then fluency. The same thing applies to, well, just about everything: running a business, parenting, becoming a leader, small steps, repetition, fluency, and independence. So we want to shape behavior. So we want to take those small steps over time. So behavior isn't all at once because we have all these goals we want to achieve and all these things we want to do, but we need to break it down and take it into small steps at a time and have small goals. There's nothing wrong with small obtainable goals to reach those much longer goals. Lots of times we write a behavior plan, we have long-term goals. So like the full goal, let's just say we're working on toileting. So the full goal is independently using the toilet. That is a long-term goal, but we might break it up into smaller goals like toileting readiness. So sitting on the toilet would be a start. How long can they sit on a toilet? What is the expectation? So, and it's different per every individual. We don't jump to success, we shape behavior towards it. So, starting with a small approximations. So, small little steps to get there. When you are teaching a child to swim, or you're learning to swim, you don't just hope for the best, right? Because they could drown. You make small steps over time. Although I do know some parents that just throw them in the water and they'll figure it out. But most of the time we're taking small steps to work towards swimming. So putting our feet in the water, maybe we're holding on to something, maybe we start with a floaty and then work our way up to swimming and hopefully swimming independently. So, and reinforcing small progress, any progress. So, this includes yourself. If you're looking at your own behavior and becoming successful, you want to reinforce your own progress. And I even sometimes will reward myself with something. It's like, okay, I did all the things that I wanted to do. I accomplished my day. My to-do list is now I get to watch the show I want to watch. Small things, small reinforcers. You can even reinforce yourself every day. You can find something small. Building fluency over time. It takes time to build fluency. And one way to build up fluency is through repetition. A lot of successful people will tell you to make a habit. And sometimes people think habits are bad, but habits are just things that you do every day consistently. So it's a habit. It could be a good habit, it could be a bad habit, but either way, it's a habit. So if you want to wake up early, set an alarm. You want to make your bed every day, make your bed every day. So you got to start having habits. And like I said, there's plenty of habits that I want to have or things that I want to do, but break it up, make it small over time. Start with like one or two attainable goals that you want to use to change your life. So, whatever those goals are, make them small and see where it goes, right? So, small, is it something you can consistently do? So, small habits over time, being as consistent as possible And that's the key is consistency because that's how you're going to build habits. If you just do it every once in a while, that is not a habit. So it's something that you do pretty regularly and you build a fluency. You don't go from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. overnight. That's not sustainable, right? So instead, you might reinforce little times in between 8:45, 8:30, 8:15, enforcing small successes, right? So you may not go from that. Maybe you're starting a workout routine and you want to work out every day and you start um an hour a day. That's a lot to do. So maybe instead start with a smaller habit and something that's more attainable. So maybe you can't even do every day. Maybe it's like, okay, what I can do is I can go for a walk 10 minutes a day, or I can go to the gym 20 minutes three times a week, whatever it is and whatever it may fit into your schedule. And the idea is just building that habit. And habits, that's how habits strengthen behavior. Has how habits strengthen behavior. Not all leaders grow at the same time or rate, and that's okay. And either that could be a leadership like in your home, like that could be your parenting, this could be professional. There's all different ways that success is defined. And it's okay that not everybody builds at the same rate. What matters is consistency and deliberate practice. Practice, practice, practice. So I just want to say something that I'm very proud of myself on is I started this podcast a little over a year ago. 3 followers. One of them I think were my kids, my husband, and my ex-husband. I think those were my first 3 followers. And I am very thankful for the followers that I have now. And even though it's not a huge growth, I'm thankful for the growth that I have. And it's slowly building over time. I also noticed things that when I first started, my voice, I was all over the place. I'm getting a little bit better. I'm starting to see those things in myself. I'm starting to see those shifts and I'm starting to listen to myself, slow my voice down, not stumble over my words as frequently. So, and one of those things and reason that why I'm able to do that, even though this has been something I've struggled with probably my whole life, is interrupting. I interview people, interrupting people, and it's something I really work on. Another thing is being able to slow down, talking over my words, going because in my head, my thoughts race really fast and I try to slow down so I can get everything out. And I also interrupt because I don't want to forget what I was saying. So I've gotten better with that. And I recognize that about myself. And I will tell you one of the reasons that I've been able to do that is deliberate practice. Being able to practice this weekly or bi weekly with this podcast has been extremely helpful to me. And you could even do something like that yourself if that's something you struggle with. The video modeling, listening to yourself, there's already successful people wherever you want to find success in your life. If that is your goal, right? I want to know how this mom does this or juggles this. Just listen to those people, right? We might have very new, aspiring ideas, which is wonderful, but having a role model is great or having somebody else that you listen to and able to model afterwards and listening to the things that they do and things that made them successful in their life. Like, so practicing it. So we can't just one day say we did this one time. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be over time. We also want to be able to generalize it, our skills. So if you pick up a skill and you're like, I'm really great at this time, you've got to do it different places. You got to do it with different people, right? That thing. And what makes somebody an expert at something is doing something really well, better than what most would do and doing it deliberately, right? And consistently over time, being an expert at something. So you're not just going to say, oh, yeah, I grew those tomatoes one time. So now I'm an expert. That doesn't make you an expert. To be an expert at something, it has to be some work over time. And the standards for everybody to be an expert at something, everybody. And I don't think that there's one standard necessarily that makes you an expert, but it's definitely more than one time. And it's definitely something that you have to have done your research on to be considered an expert in anything. So you want you want your skills to carry on. Let's just say that your goal to be successful is you want to just be kinder to people. Be kinder to people. It's like, I want to say nice things to people and I want to be kind to them. You don't want to just do that work. You want to do that at home. You want to do that in parenting. You want to do that across different relationships in your life. So, in order for you to be successful at being kinder to people, you've got to carry that in other areas of your life. That's where the real mastery comes in. When you can not only hone in on a skill, but then master it across different people, across different setting, across different situations, which we call in ABA generalizing. So practicing every day, important, really important, that deliberate practice. And self-monitoring your own behavior is a huge thing. We want to be able to, so now that you kind of have an idea of generalization is very important. Being consistent, I know we talk about all the time, but it's very true. Being consistent, doing it over time. And even if you mess up like one day, you're like, oh shoot, I didn't make my bed today. That was I was gonna make my bed every day. I don't. And that's how we kind of lose out of habits. And I'm so guilty of that too. Where it's like I start doing something and I'm like, well, maybe just today, or I won't do it. And then over time, we're just not doing that thing anymore. And it's no longer a habit. But then you can always pick it back up and be consistent with it again. Right. So maybe you missed a day, maybe you were sick and you were laying in bed, so you didn't get to make your bed for a few days. Okay, move on. So after those few days are over, what are we going to do? Get back up and do it. And that's really a huge part of it. Also, being able to self monitor your own behavior. So, we talked a little bit about learning from others, but you also want to learn from yourself and being able to monitor yourself. So, you should be able to take your own data, being able to monitor you and your progress. Even if you look like if I took like my first podcast that I made and then looked at where I am now, right? So I could just self monitor and be like, oh my gosh, like that's a big difference. Or even if I just want to, because I'm slowly shaping this behavior and look at something even smaller, maybe I look at last week or like the week before, or maybe I look at how many views I have or whatever it may be. So that's small successes and small progress and self monitoring your behavior. Maybe it's like, ooh, yeah, I did better last week. Now, this week, not so much. So that's also very important too, is to self monitor your own behavior and see the progress that you want to make. And then just being very observant because it goes into other people as well, is observing their behavior, other people's behavior. Let's just say that you want to be like a YouTuber, okay? And you are really interested in that, which I know there's such a there's such a large amount of people out there that want to be YouTubers, is that you want to do your research, like how to be a YouTuber, how to be able to do this. So you want to do your research on that. And you also want to just kind of watch other people and what they do. And that could be for any area of your life. So I just use YouTuber as an example. Or if you want to be, a content creator, if you want to be, a plant mom or dad. I don't know. So obsessed with plants right now. I think it's just because it's spring and my dad's growing a whole bunch of plants, but yeah, so just anything that you want to do or something you want to build. It's like you want to be really good at 3D printing. How do you do that? How do you start doing 3D printing? Like, what do I need to do? Doing your research, modeling after people, and modeling after and watching people that are successful, doing your research on them and modeling. And then self monitoring your own behavior. So, do I match with some of those things that they're doing? What can I do differently? Because how come this person has the success and like, what can I do to also get that success too? Or like they created this really cool fidget on their 3D printer. How can I create that too? Why does mine look different? And then being able to do your research. That's a combination of both of somebody else that you're observing, maybe multiple people, and then yourself. Also, what are you actually practicing every day? So you want to pinpoint behaviors also that you want to change. So if, for example, you are laying in bed. I love sleep, honestly. If, the problem behavior is I snooze my alarm 5 times, that's why I don't get up and make my bed, then yeah, I'm not doing the thing I said that I would do, but what's the replacement for that? So like what can I do? Well, obviously not snoozing your alarm, right? Maybe I could do some other strategies like go to bed earlier. That could be one. Maybe I do sleep a little bit later but then I make sure I have an alarm set for my bed making alarm, right? So I have some kind of strategy to make sure that my bed is still made. I do something and being proactive to make sure that that's going to happen and setting myself up for success. Even like small, slight changes can make a huge difference. And also, I just want to address as I'm talking about other people and modeling where those people are doing, there's always somebody modeling you and your behavior as well. Bottom line. So if you are doing things or you're like, oh, like, I don't know if she's doing that. I'm really kind of off today or whatever, there's somebody out there who's observing you and seeing what you're doing. Whether that's other people you work with, whether that's your children or whoever it might be in your life, there's somebody out there that's watching you and what use that you're doing. And your behavior is contagious. Even if you are in an environment where the behaviors, right, are negative, etc. So if that is the case, your behavior is so contagious. So the way that you respond. So you want to be very mindful of the way that you're responding from things. So one thing that's very helpful for the people around you, and this is for any kind of success you're looking for, whether that's like I said in parenting, if it work, wherever it might be in your an area of your life. Maybe you're a business owner like some of your employees, or maybe you work for a company and other people that you work with. Your behavior is contagious no matter where you are, like what environment you're in. So, kind of the response, like if you're yelling, like somebody is going to have a response to that, right? So, like whatever that is, one thing you could do is to give compliments. Compliments, positive praise go a long way. So you see somebody like, I like your shirt today. Hey, this glass will look great. Hey, I love the way you guys are, I don't know what situation that you're in specifically, but if you're example like a behavior analyst, if you're in that profession and you're working with an RBT and you're also like, that that's a hard job. It is. And you could just tell them, hey, like, I really like the way you did, which we should be doing anyways, giving that positive feedback is I really like the way that you redirected that client today. I really like the way that you worked on waiting with them. I really saw that today. And I know that what you do is really tough. Also giving your clients, if you are working in that field, like your clients positive praise, which you should also be doing your caregivers, whoever you're around, right? Because there's something that you can compliment, something you can praise, something and that you want to reinforce that you want to see more of. And it also just helps like if there's anything in your environment that needs change. And then also just if you have feedback to give, just make sure that it's reciprocal feedback. So like if you give feedback, make sure you also receive feedback because there's nothing wrong with receiving feedback. And I just say that's just clear across the board. That's not even just in ABA, the medical model of working with an RBT or working with caregivers, just in general. Like if you get feedback to somebody, take feedback too. Like that's how we grow. And being able to give those compliments and positive praise goes a long way. So if you have, people say a lot of times, like, oh, my boss is, they're really crappy. But if you are a boss and you are receiving feedback as well as giving feedback and it's reciprocated, I think that you're going to have a much different relationship. So you honestly observe your behavior, what you're doing. Is your behavior contagious? What does that look like? What can you change? How can you pivot around? If it is not, and you are in a bad mood and you are not interested today is not the day to be messed with. You did not get your coffee or you had your coffee and it was not enough today. What can you do to pivot that around? Because there's always room to pivot. We're human, right? So I say one thing to always do, the compliments or positive praise are huge. Being able to just praise something, right? Like, so that could be a compliment. Like you could say something nice to somebody like, hey, I like your glass or whatever. Or you could say like, also, I really like the way that you did this. Or you tell somebody, hey, I really like that way that you came to work today on time. Great job, right? Always having some kind of incentive because, I like to be told that I'm doing a good job and many people do. Positive praise goes a long way. And some tools that might help you when we're looking at our own behavior, honestly, which is honestly being the key. Video feedback. Video feedback is great. Even if it's just for yourself, you're not doing a podcast, you're not interested in that, you don't want to share yourself with the world, that's totally fine. That's not for everybody. But video feedback, if you're watching videos of yourself, if you're trying to do something and you watch yourself and how you do it, just like if you were doing a sport and, you watch the play-by-play or watch the video feedback and you're like, oh, I could have done this differently, or I could have moved this way, or I could have done something different. So even if you want to be like a better speaker or whatever it may be, you can video yourself doing it to become more successful at it. Even if it's just like, you know what, compliments are really hard for me. I'm going to just video myself giving compliments. Like, yeah, you can. You can absolutely video yourself giving compliments. Collaborating with others. Are you seeing the same things? So the video modeling, so whether that's a person that's just like online, or if it's like somebody that's like an expert or really good at the skill that you want to grow, collaborating with others is really important. Also, when you're doing feedback, something that behavior analysts often do with an RBT is like interobservable agreement, is just seeing, oh, did you get the same data as me? Are we seeing the same thing? You can always check in with somebody in your life, like, are we seeing the same thing? Are we doing the same thing? Kind of measuring some of that. So, like, let's just say you are working on a product. You look at it and you're like, oh, are you doing the same thing as me? If I'm not doing the same thing as you, how can I change it? Like, what can I do differently? And so having that collaboration is very important. Growth is important, right? And being able to measure yourself and your progress and being aware of yourself is very important. Being able to monitor yourself and your own behavior is huge, and it takes a lot of growth. And I don't know that everybody is to the point where they're ready to measure their progress and see how it is that they're doing, but it's a huge help when you can watch yourself and you can observe others. It's tremendous. That's how we do a lot of learning, is through modeling, whether that's through our modeling ourselves, growing ourselves, getting better, or modeling others. So one thing too is, a really hard thing is sticking with it. Like I said, that's how habits fall away. Going to the gym, doing things you're going to say you're going to do, but life gets busy. You don't finish it. You say you're going to start a product. You don't finish it. I have plenty of projects that I was going to start and not finish. And actually, I wanted to say something because I know I've mentioned this podcast a couple times, is that when I first started this, my husband's like, okay, we'll see how that goes. All right, you're starting a podcast. And he's very proud that I've been able to just stick with it regardless of whatever growth that is, that I'm able to just do it, that I'm on here doing it consistently. And I say that for anything that you're passionate about, sticking with it, because I will say that this has been a passion project of mine, because I love meeting people. I think it's great, people in our field, parents, just some really interesting people, like, the certified sleep specialist I had, psychic medium. Like, there's been some really cool guests, and I'm just so honored and thrilled for the people that I've had on this show. So I'm just very, very thankful. But, because I have the motivation to do it, and even when I'm solo casting, or like right now, and I have the motivation to do it, and sticking with it, motivation goes a long way. And that's a big part of ABA. It's like, okay, so what is the MO? What is the motivator? Because let's say you're a boss at a company and your employees don't want to do anything. They're not motivated. If they're on their phone all the time, they're not, what is motivating them? Because obviously getting the paycheck is not enough of a motivation. So what will motivate them? So sometimes people use this, like, I just want to say, choosing to delay rewards over immediate comfort takes a lot of self-control. And some people do. Some people are able to do that, to defer their rewards. Just like in college, you have a lot of people that are just like, okay, like, I know in the long run, I'm going to get this degree and I'm going to have this job that I want. I'm going to be successful. Okay. That is wonderful. And not everybody you're going to have in your life is able to delay some of those awards. Like, of course, we're all able to at some point, but there's different things that may impact that, and your self-efficacy, which means believing you can persist even when it's hard. So even believing that you can do it, even when it's hard, even when your environment is crumbling. So even if it's like somebody's like, yeah, like I was totally homeless and I lost everything. And then I just knew though, I just knew I could do it and I was going to be successful in life and I was going to own my own company. Okay. Your world is crumbling around you, but you believe you could do this. And that goes a long way. And that is something that is a private event because it's a self thought, it's a self belief that we can't see. And that is amazing. And it's not everybody can. I truly believe that has like a capability to believe that they can do something. The difference is the motivation. So, what is motivating you? Is it the self thought? Because if you tell yourself every day, I can't do it, I can't do this, you're not going to do it because not only are you saying you can't, because you're probably also physically not trying, right? So that goes a long way is, I mean, being able to motivate yourself because of the drive that you have and the knowing that you can do this and that you want something enough to receive it. So like if somebody is, even if they're very intelligent and they're in a high schooler and they definitely have the capability, they have the skill set, they can get an A if they choose to, and they don't turn their assignments. Now there could be multiple reasons they're not turning assignments, but one is they're not motivated. They're not motivated to turn in their assignments. Not motivated enough, at least, to get the thing that they want. An A doesn't have the value. And they're not motivated by it. What they might be motivated by, if their parent says, if you don't turn your assignments, then you aren't earning your electronics. That might be more of a motivation for them. So another thing that's interesting about self-efficacy is that not only do you believe that you can persist, but you are resistant or you have some resistance to extinction, because extinction is the environment is saying that this is not available. So just a brief overview on extinction. If I do something different and I'm putting on extinctions, if, for example, a child gets up and every night they're like, I want water, mommy. I want water, mommy. And you're always getting them a cup of water, always getting them a cup of water. And eventually you stop giving them the cup of water, you put on extinction. You're no longer giving them access to that thing that they want. And so you might see like an increase in behavior and eventually over time, no longer asking for that water because they know it's not available. But in self-efficacy, if there's you being resistant to extinction, it's a very powerful thing, because even though your environment around you is like, yeah, this is not going to happen for you. And I know I'm going to get it and I'm going to get the money that I want. Your past experiences, one thing that when some people are more resistant to extinction than others is that your past experiences shape your belief in yourself. So if you maybe had somebody in your life at some point who said, yeah, you could do this, you could do whatever you want, that will shape your experience. If you had the opposite of that, that can shape your experience. If you yourself just tell yourself that you can do this, those are also going to shape your experiences. So if you've struggled before, it doesn't mean that you can't succeed. It just means that you need to rebuild a reinforcement history. Whatever your past experience is like, okay, now I know why. It's because I told myself like I couldn't do this, or somebody said to me I couldn't do this, right? So now I have these private events in my mind that I'm not able to do these things, or I've had this happen to me, like even if it's outwardly in the environment, and that's why these things are working out and why I having a hard time getting to where I want to be. So we want to rebuild some of that reinforcement history and find out what it will motivate you, right? And being able to change some of those private events, because at some level, you have to believe that you're going to do the thing. You have to believe, even if something as simple as like, I'm going to make my bed, you have to believe that you're going to wake up and make your bed. If you lay in bed and hit the snooze 5 times and say, I can't, then you're not going to. So we can't see. So self-talk, doubt, motivation. So those are covert behavior matters. Things might look fine on the outside, but inside you might be struggling internally, or you might be having thoughts or feelings, right? So, for example, if you have a headache, the only way I know that you have a headache is if you tell me you have a headache. I can't see that you have a headache. I can't observe that for you. So that's something that's also a private event or covert behavior that's happening internally. So thank you very much, BF Skinner, for including private events into behavior. This was known as radical behaviorism because at the time it was totally radical to think that something inside could be behavior, something that wasn't observable outside. But if you're self-monitoring your own behavior, you can observe what's going on inside you and what your thoughts are, and you can measure them. And you can even measure how you were feeling or what you said to yourself on different days. So let's be clear, leaders are not born. They are developed through behavior change, and your behavior, it's contagious. Your habits influence your kids, your work ethic influences your team, your attitude shapes your environment. So ask yourself, what am I modeling right now in my life? Is this the behavior that I would want to model? Do I want my kids to model my behavior? Do I want my coworkers to model my behavior? So reinforcement, feedback, relationships. If you want behavior to continue, it has to be reinforced, right? So that's a big one. So if we want to see behavior in the future, we want to reinforce it. So give compliments. And you know what? If you are self-monitoring your own behavior, you want to work on your own self motivation, give yourself compliments, give yourself positive praise, reinforce yourself, go take yourself out to a spa day, go do something for yourself, watch a show you want to watch. The end of the day, my checklist is done, or I did most of the things I wanted to do in my day because my to-do list is never ending. But I made my day, it was productive. I'm going to watch the show I want to watch. Rewarding yourself. It's important. Make feedback reciprocal, not one-sided. So make sure that if you're giving feedback, you're also receiving feedback. Because here what's happened when reinforcement is low. One thing that could happen is something we call ratio strain. So you're giving more than you're getting, right? So we don't want to strain out too long, or we don't want to strain yourself. Another thing is matching law. So people go, or you could say, people go where reinforcement flows. So people go where reinforcement is higher. And if you want to do something like want better relationships, increase meaningful reinforcement. Instead of asking, why is this happening? Or why is this happening to me? You can instead say, what's the problem behavior? What's the replacement behavior? Then break it down by using a task analysis. So adjustment based on skill levels. So the less skill that you or somebody else has, the more support you're going to need and the more steps, the more breaking it down. The more skill, whatever the skill is, the more independence, the less steps that you're going to need for that. So for example, like a task analysis can be like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So if you make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and you know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you make one every day for lunch or whatever, or you make one for your kids, like you don't need a lot of steps or know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You pretty much have that skill down. But if you're learning for the first time how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you need more specific steps to be able to break it down. So remember the same thing. If you are learning like a skill, a new skill in your life, or you're trying to change something about yourself, break it down to smaller steps and reinforce those small steps. You don't need to have it all done at once. Here's another thing to take away. Behavior doesn't happen randomly. It requires an establishing operation, motivation. So deprivation increases value if somebody isn't motivated. The behavior won't occur. And here's a bigger one. Reinforcement must be available. No reinforcement, probably not a behavior change. Every behavior follows this pattern. So motivation, we call it the 4-term contingency. So it's motivation, antecedent, behavior, consequence. So we'll talk about the establishing operation. So for example, if you are very thirsty and your motivation is to get a drink, the antecedent, so we talked about antecedents before. Antecedent is anything that happens before a behavior. There's a soda machine. The behavior is you go to the soda machine, you put in money. Consequences, you get a soda, right? But the motivation is you're not thirsty. You just drank a whole jug of water and there's a soda machine. Cool. You may not be drinking out of it, right? You're not motivated to get a drink from the soda machine and spend your money when you're not thirsty. You're not motivated. You're not thirsty. So the motivation has to be there. When you understand this, it can change everything. And you can change anything. Another helpful tool is using the SMART framework. There's an acronym called SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. So being specific about your goal is important. Measurable. Make sure it's measurable, easy to measure, right? So even if that's like video feedback, okay? So whatever it is that you can measurable. It's specific and it's measurable and it's achievable. That's a big one. Is it achievable? Like, if you're like, I want to lose, whatever, like you're 200 pounds, you want to lose 100 pounds. That's a high amount, but you want to lose like half your body weight. That's a goal. Is it achievable right now? How long is it going to take you to get there? That's going to take you some time. So make sure it's achievable. Make it small little goals to get there. Make sure it's relevant and then time bound. So make sure you like give yourself like a time frame. And then also the biggest thing is the consistency. Like how often are we doing this here? Right? We want to make sure that we're consistent. So don't just say I want to be successful. Too vague. Too vague. We want to be more specific than that. I will wake up at 7:30 4 days a week for the next 2 weeks. That's a behavior that you can track and it breaks down exactly what you're going to do and it's achievable. All right. So success isn't just about doing everything at once. It's about practicing the right behaviors, reinforcing progress, staying consistent, even when it's hard. So I'm just going to leave this with you. What are you practicing every day? Because whatever you're practicing, that's what you're becoming. If this episode hit home, share it with someone else in your life. And just remember, you are not in this journey alone.